Hello everyone, welcome to my channel again. Today we're gonna learn how to create a complete sign up and login system using PHP MySQL database. First, let me show you a quick demo of the project that we're gonna build. So we have a registration form where you can put the information, and we have a login form. So if we provide any wrong information, it will not allow you to log in. Also, we have some validation and verification in the registration form. There are lots of other things, so we'll see how you code. So let's get started. First of all, we need a software called Jump. You can download it from internet. You can download for your operating system. I have already downloaded, so let's install it. The installation process is very easy and straightforward. Just notice the location where you are installing it. In this case, it is Jump folder inside C drive. The process can take a couple of minutes, so be patient with it. After the installation is complete, a control panel should appear automatically. So we need two modules, Apache and MySQL. Just click a start on those. Now, if for some reason the control panel does not appear automatically, search it on your program list and it should appear there. As we installed the Jump software inside C drive, in the C drive there should be a new folder called Jump, and inside the Jump folder there is another folder called htdocs. So all our projects need to be put inside this htdocs folder. Now let's create a new project named login register. Now I will open it using Visual Studio Code. You can use your own code editor in this case. So let's open the folder from that specific location. C, then Jump, and then the htdocs, and the name of the project is login register. Now we can start coding. Let's create a new file for the registration form. Name it registration.php. Now let's add the HTML5 boilerplate code using the VS Code shortcut, and let's give it a title of registration form. Now let's add the form into a div container, and now let's put the actual form. Here method will be post because we are sending a post request, and action will be the same file registration.php because we will use the PHP code here. Now let's add the actual fields. So we are keeping the fields into a parent div. The first field is a text field and it will be full name. So here we are using a name attribute. It is important because we will use this name attribute inside the PHP code. So placeholder is the instruction that will be shown to the user. Let's copy and paste for other fields. So the second field we can use email. In this case, we will have to change the type to email. And the third field is password. In this case, the type will be password. So the fourth field will be the repeat password field. It is just for the confirmation of the password so that user does not make any mistakes when they put the password. Lastly, we need the button for the submission of the form. So in this case, the type will be submit, and value is the level that will be shown to the user in the button. And let's give it a name also, submit. Now let's see how it looks in the browser. So to access it, we'll have to access through localhost. So let's type localhost and slash and the name of the folder. Just make sure Jump control panel is enabled. Now the name of the folder is login register, and then the name of the file. The name of the file is registration.php. So this is how it looks. Now let's add some styling here. We can use Bootstrap in this case. Bootstrap is a framework that makes life a lot easier for the quick projects. So it already have some styling have been done for us. Let's copy the CSS part. We'll copy the HTML code and we'll put it inside the head tag. of this HTML. Now let's add our own style file. Let's name it style.css. Now let's give some style to the container. Okay, we'll have to link it with the HTML file. Now let's add some style in the container. Let's give it a max width of 600 pixels so that it is not very wide. Then let's give margin auto to make it centered horizontally. And let's add some padding also. Now let's add some padding into the body tag so that the form does not touch the top of the page. And let's add some box shadow to the container. I'm just copying pasting, and then let's add some margin to the fields. So in this case we are using 30 pixels. Now we'll have to add the bootstrap class to the form field. In this case the class is form control. So we'll have to copy this. This is for the bootstrap framework. So let's copy and paste for all the fields. And for the button we'll have to use a different class name. In this case the class is button primary. Now let's see how it looks. It's looking nice, but there's some extra margin after the registration button. So let's fix it. Let's just add a different name for that button. Now it's looking great. So the form is ready. Now we'll have to save the data into MySQL database when somebody click register after putting the information. For that we need a database. We can access the MySQL database using phpMyAdmin. For that just type localhost/phpMyAdmin in the browser and then click new. So the database name we are using login register. You can use your own. Then click create. Now we need a table, and for the columns we need to check how many fields we have. Here 4 fields we see, but we don't need any column for the repeat password because that is just for the confirmation of the password. So we have 3 fields, but we need 4 columns. For the ID columns we need 1 extra. Now let's give a table a name. In this case I'm giving users as the name, and then click create. Now we'll have to provide the column name, the field name. The first one is ID as I said, and it will be in integer value and will be auto increment. And the second field is the one that we have in the form, the first one, full name, and the type will be varchar. Varchar are used for the field that are not too big and that are string value, and the length is the length of the characters. In this case for the full name I am giving 128, and the third field will be email field, which is the second field in the form, and it will be varchar, and the length is 255. You can use the length based on your requirements. The last field is password. It is also varchar, and I am giving the length of 255. And after all, let's click save. So the database and table is ready. Now we'll have to add the PHP code to process the data and insert the data into this database. Let's add the code. So we are using registration.php in the action. That means we'll have to put the code in this same file. Let's add the code immediately after the form tag. Now all the PHP code need to be put inside the PHP special tags. Just keep in mind that. So whenever you write something, just put PHP tag. Now in PHP there is a global array variable called post that catches all the data submitted by the users in the form. First let's check what it currently has using the printer method. The printer method will tell us what the variable has currently. So let's check what it has. First we will check without providing any value. So now we have the array key, but array key does not have any values on it. So email does not have any value, but the array key are there. Now let's provide the information. Now we have the information there. You see full name has Brad Pitt, email. Here the array key are the name that we used in the form. That means we can access all the data submitted by the users using the post variable. Now first of all, we'll have to check whether or not the form is submitted. So we can do that by using the submit name we used in the button. So we'll have to use if statement. In the if statement, there is a function called isSet. So in the isSet function, we will provide the post variable and with the array key submit. That means the code inside this if statement will work only if somebody click the register button. Now let's store the data into some variables. We can access the data using the post array variable, and in this case the array key will be the value of the name attributes we provided. So for example, the first one will be full name as the array key in the post variable, and for the second one the array key will be email. Let's copy and paste and then change the array key and variable name. Second one is email, and the name attribute is email. Third one is password, and the value of the name attributes in this case is password. And the last one is the repeat password. So in this case the array key will be repeat password, the value provided in the name attribute, so it is repeat password. Before inserting the data into the database, we will have to do some validation. For that purpose, let's declare a new empty array variable named errors. So if any errors happens, we will add that specific error into this array. Now as a first one, let's check if there is any empty value provided by the users. We can do that using the empty method of PHP. So we are using the empty function, actually empty function inside the if statement, and in the empty function the argument will be the variable where we already stored the data. So to check every variable, we will use OR operator. That means if any of the variable has empty value, then the code inside this if statement will work. Otherwise the code inside else statement will work. So let's do it for every variables. Now if there is any empty value provided by the users, we will add a new array item into the errors array. So we can do that using the array push function. In this function, the first argument will be the name of the variable. In this case it is errors, and the second argument will be the error name. You can use anything here. I am using all fields are required. Now if you don't understand why I am doing these things, just bear with me, you will understand more when we code further. Now let's check if the email provided by the user is valid email or not. We can do that using the filter var function of PHP. So let's use filter var function inside the if statement. So if filter var function return false, then we will add a new errors into the errors array. So in the filter var function, the first argument will be the email variable where we stored the email provided by the user, and then the second argument will be a constant, PHP constant. So it need to be exactly the same. It is filter validate, so just provide the exactly same constant name. Now let's add new errors into the using the array push function like we did for the empty values. So in this case again the first argument will be the variable name, and the second argument will be the error. So you can provide anything here. I'm adding email is not valid. Now let's check the password. So if password length is less than 8, then we will add a new error into the errors array. We can check the length of the string using strlen function. So in this function, the variable need to be provided as argument. In this case, it is password. So if password length is less than 8, we can do that using the less than operator. Then we will add a new error into the errors array. So we'll do it using array push function again. So let's provide the first argument errors and then the error. So you can use anything here. I will use password must be at least 8 characters long. Now let's check if the user provides a different password in the repeat password field. We can do that using the not equal operator in the if statement. So password not equal to, if password is not equal to password repeat, we can just copy it from the variable we declared for the safety purpose. So if password is not equals to password repeat, then we will add a new error into the errors array. Again, we will use array push function and then the variable name and the error name. So you can use anything here. I'm writing password does not match. I have made a small mistake here, sorry. So the filter validate will be filter validate email. Let's fix it. Now it is time to understand why we use the errors array. So we will have to check whether or not the errors array is empty. If the errors array is empty, that means there is no error. That means any of these conditions are not true. So we can check the number of array elements in an array using a function called count. So if count, I mean the length of the array is greater than 0, then we have errors. We cannot insert the data into the database. So let's check it using the count function. So the argument will be the name of the variable errors. If it is greater than 0, that means it is not empty, then we will display the errors to the users. Now as it is an array element and it has multiple values, so we can check, we can display those values using for each loop. So in this case, inside for each, we'll have to use errors variable and we don't need any key. So let's delete the key. So it will be just error. And now display the error using the echo operator. So you will use the div element here, and inside div element we will use the class from bootstrap. In this case, as it is an alert to the users and as it is a error, so we use alert danger, these two classes, so that it looks as an error to the users. So if there is error, we will display the errors, and if there is no error, so in the else statement we will insert the data. So let's just comment now. We will insert the data into database. Now let's check what we have done so far. I made a small mistake here. I forgot to provide the ending div element. Let's add it. Now let's check it to localhost. So localhost, then name of the folder, login register, and then the name of the file registration.php. So first let's not provide any value and click the register button. So we got all the error, all fields are required, email is not valid, password must be at least 8 characters long. Now let's provide the full name and the email, Brad at, for example, example.com, and then you can provide anything here. I'm just testing. So password, let's put a password that is not more than 7 characters so that we get the error, and I am using a different password. Now we got 2 errors. Password must be at least 8 characters long, password does not match. Now let's provide all the information correctly and see if we get any errors. Let's provide the email correctly. Let's provide the password. So I am giving 1 to 9 in this case. and then click the register button. So we are not getting any errors. That means everything is working perfectly, and so we are ready to insert the data into database. Before that, let's do some password security. So if we directly insert this password into the database, and if anybody get access to your database, he or she can easily see the password. For that reason, we will have to encrypt the password. So we can encrypt the password using the password hash function. So let's do it. We can store the new password into a new variable. In this case, it's password hash, and then the function. So here the first argument will be the name of the variable existing password, and then the name of the algorithm. In this case, we will have to use a constant, PHP constant. There are other ways, there are other constant. You can just check the internet. I am using the default one here. Now we can insert the data. Let's fix the variable name. Let's follow the same naming convention we have used for other variables so that you don't get confused. Now we can insert the data, but to insert the data, we will have to connect to the database first. Now, whenever we will do something with the database, we will have to connect to the database. So we may need the connection several times. So we can use that part of code into separate files. So let's create a new file and name it database.php. So in this file, we will add the code for connecting to the database. So we'll have to start with the PHP deck, and then there is a function called MySQLi connect to connect to the database. Now in this function, we have 4 arguments. The first argument is the database hostname. Let's add the variable first. We will store the variables few seconds later. The database hostname is the first argument, then database username, and then database password, and then database name itself. Now in this case, as you are using localhost, the hostname will be localhost. Actually, most of the time it is localhost. So if you don't change anything in the configuration, it is localhost by default. And also the database username is root by default, RWT. However, if you change anything in the configuration, then you will have to use that username password you used in the configuration. And the password is by default empty, so you will not have to use anything here. Just keep it empty. Then the database name. The database name is the one that we already created using php-myadmin. So let's copy from there. So let's go to the php-myadmin again. And the one that says login register is the one we created. Just copy and put it as the 4th arguments. So now the MySQL connect function can return true or false. If anything wrong happens, it will return false. So let's keep it into a variable, and we will check if it returns false. So if it returns false, then we will stop the execution of the code here. So we can do that using the die method. Let's do it, and we will give a message to the users that something went wrong. So if we provide any wrong information, then it will trigger an error. So it will return false. Now we'll have to include the file into our registration.php. You can do that using required once function. So in this case, the name is database.php. The file name is database.php. I made a small mistake here. I forgot to provide the $sign in the connection variable. So let's fix it, and now let's test if there is anything wrong with the database connection. So provide all the information in the form and then click register. After that, if it triggers any errors or warning, that means database connection is not okay. So let's see. It is not showing any error or warning. That means database connection is successful. Now for the testing purpose, let's just change something here. Let's change the database name to something else. We can just remove the R from the end and Now let's check again. So it is showing us a warning saying that unknown database login registry and something went wrong. So code execution stopped here. Now let's quickly fix it again. And let's check again here. The error is gone. That means everything is working perfectly. We can now go ahead and insert the data into the database. So let's do it. We need a SQL command for this. Let's store the SQL command into a variable named SQL. The SQL command for inserting the data is insert into and then the name of the table. We'll have to keep it inside double quotation because it is a string. So insert into and the name of the table, we can copy it from the phpMyAdmin. So it should be users. So let's copy it. So insert into the name of the table and then the name of the columns into in the brackets. So let's again check the phpMyAdmin for the column names. We can check using the structure. So the first one is ID. We don't need ID because that will be automatically incremented, so we don't need to provide any values for the IDs. Just copy from the full name, and then the last two are email and password. Now we'll have to provide the values. So values, in this case we have already have the values stored on the variable, as you know. So the first one is full name and then email, password we will already have in the variable, but this is not a good practice to directly provide the values because it is vulnerable to the SQL injection. So we will follow a better approach. So here, instead of providing the value directly, we will add a placeholder. So we can do that using the question mark. So later we will bind the values here. Before executing this SQL command, we will have to prepare a statement, and before preparing the statement, we will have to initiate it through a function called MySQLi stmt init. So let's quickly check what this function does in the internet so that we can understand better. Let's see what it says. It says this function initializes a statement and returns an object suitable for MySQL statement prepare. So it returns an object and we can use that object in the MySQL statement prepare function. So let's store the object in a variable named stmt. Now on this function we will have to provide the connection variable we used in the database.php to store the connection. So we'll have to use that connection variable as the argument of this function. Now we can use this statement object inside the MySQLi statement prepare function. MySQLi stmt prepare. So we'll have to provide two arguments on this function. The first argument is the statement object, in this case stmt, and the second argument is the SQL command SQL. Now this function can return either true or false. So if anything wrong happens, it will return false. So for that reason, let's store this into a variable prepare statement so that we can check what it returns using the if statement. So if it is true, it returns true. Only if it returns true, then we will proceed. So we will start adding the values in the SQL command. So we can do that using the MySQLi and then statement then bind params. So we will bind the values into the SQL command. So here we will have to provide some arguments. The first argument should be the statement object. The first argument should be a statement object, and the second argument should be the type of the values. So we are using three values here. So all the three values are string. If you see full name, email, password, all are strings. So we'll have to use 3s, which is shortcut for three strings. So S, and then we'll have to provide the actual values. So the first value is full name. We already stored the values in the variable, you know. The first one is full name, and the second one is email, and the third one is password hash. So we are not providing password because we have encrypted it using password hash. So all the three values are provided. Now we can go ahead and execute the command. So we can do that using a function called MySQL stmt execute. Here we'll have to provide the statement object as the argument. So if everything is okay, now the execution is done properly. You can show the users that you are registered successfully. Now we can show it using a bootstrap class so that it looks good. So the bootstrap class in this case is alert and alert success. So it will show a alert box for the success message. Here we'll have to use single quotation actually. So the message you can provide, you are registered successfully. You are registered successfully. Else, if anything wrong happens in the prepare statement, then so let's use else. So if anything wrong happens, then we will stop the code execution here using the die method. So the message you can provide is something went wrong. Okay, now let's check in the browser if everything is working fine. So let's provide the values. Brad Pitt, and then email brad@example.com, and then the password 129 123 4 5 6 7 8 9. Repeat the password and then click register. So we are having an error, call to undefined function. Okay, we have misspelled the function name, the prepare. So it should be prepare, not prepare. Prepare. Now it should work fine. Yeah, you are registered successfully. Now let's check the database. Yes, we have a new value here, Brad Pitt. So everything is working. We registered successfully, but there is a small issue. Let's use the same email again to register. Let's use brad@example.com again. So we are using the same email address again. Let's click register. Now it's showing you are registered successfully. So what it does is it duplicates the email address, which should not be. So we should not use duplicate users on the database. So what you can do to fix this problem? Let's see. To solve this problem, we'll have to check the database to see if the provided email already exists. If provided email already exists, then we will add a new error to the errors array. So we can do that using some code. Let's put the code right before the code of displaying errors to the users. So here we will use a new SQL command for searching through the database to see if provided email already exists. In this case, the SQL command is select and then star. Star means all. So select all and then from. Select all from, and then we'll have to provide the name of the table. Here the name of the table is users, as you know. So select all from users where email, it is the email from the database, and then equal operator, and then the name, and then the variable name email where we stored the provided email. So again, it is the email in the database, you see, as you see. And then the one after the equal operator is the one that stored that the email. So now we'll have to execute this command, but before that we'll have to connect to the database. So we can just cut the database connection code just and place it just before the SQL command. Now we can execute the command. So we can do it using MySQL query function, MySQL query. So in this function, we will have to provide the SQL variable as argument. Now we can store the result of this execution into a new variable called result. So that result will be stored here. Now we can check the number of values on this result using a new function called MySQL num rows. So let's check the number of rows or number of values in this result. So let's give a variable name row count. So row count equals to MySQL num rows. That means number of rows in the result. Here the argument will be result. So if row count, that means the number of rows is greater than 0, that means the provided email already exists. So we'll have to add an error to the errors array. So we can do it using array push again. So in the array push, the first argument will be the errors array, the variable name, errors, and then the error. So in this case, the error will be email already exists. I made a small mistake here in the MySQL query function. So this function has two arguments. The first argument will be the connection variable we used in the database.php. So let's copy it and provide it here. Now everything should be okay. Let's now test it in the browser. So we will provide the same email address that we have in the database. So let's copy it and paste it here in the email. And let's provide the other information, name and the password, and then click register. So it is showing email already exists, so it is working perfectly. So and if you check the database, there is no new value. That means the value is not added. So our registration form is completed. Now we can start the login form. So let's create a new file named login.php, and let's put the HTML5 boilerplate code using the shortcut, and let's give it a title of login form. Now for the style, we can copy the styles from the registration.php. Let's just copy it and put it in the login.php file. Now we can put the container div, and in the container div we will put the form. Once again, in the form the method will be post because we are sending a post request, and the action will be login.php because we will use the PHP code on this same file. Now let's add the form fields. So the first field will be email, and the second field will be password because user will need to provide email and password to login. So let's add those accordingly. The first one will be type email, and placeholder, let's add a placeholder like enter email, and we'll have to provide a name again, name attribute. So for the first one, let's name it email, and we'll have to also give a class name for the bootstrap. So as you know, it was form control, so let's put form control. Now let's copy it for the second field. So the second field will be password, and the type will be password too. So let's give the placeholder enter password, and in this case the name will be password, and the class is form control as well. So lastly, we need the button, login button. So let's keep it into a parent div, form button. Then let's put the button. So in this case the type will be submit, and let's provide a value of submit, actually login. And then we'll have to provide a class. Before class name, let's give it a name again. The login is the name, and then the class name need to be provided for the button. So in this case, the bootstrap class is button primary. Now let's see how it looks in the browser. So we'll have to just change the file name to login.php in the browser. Yes, it's looking great. Now we'll have to add the PHP code to actually make it working. Once again, we will have to grab the data using the post array variable like we used in the registration.php, as you remember. So let's use it in the login.php too. So we'll have to put the PHP code inside the PHP tag. Just keep in mind that. So first we will check whether or not the login button is submitted. We can check that using the isSet method, like we used in the registration.php in the registration form. So here we will have to use the post array variable, and here the array key will be the name attribute of the login button. In this case it is login. So if login button is submitted, then we will collect the data. So we'll have to collect here email and password. So let's first let's store those value into two variables. The first one is the email, and again we will use the post array variable to access the data. Here the array key will be the name of the email field. The name of the email field is email, and then we will collect the password. So here will be it will be password. The array key will be the name of the password field. In this case it is password. Now we'll have to check whether or not this email and password field exists in the database. If only this email password exists, then we'll allow user to log in. So to do that, we'll have to connect to the database first. We can do that using the require once and then the name of the connection file. It is database.php, as you know. Now let's store the SQL command into a variable called SQL. In this case, the SQL command will be select again, as you are searching in the database. So select all data from users table, where the email column should be the first one actually. So email from the database matches the email provided by the users. In this case, the email variable will be here. Now we can execute this command using the MySQL query function. Let's put the result of the MySQL query function into a variable called result MySQL query, and then the SQL command need to be passed here. Now this MySQL query function return an object. So in the object, if you want to access the column of the database, it is a little bit difficult. For that reason, we will convert this result into an array. So we can do that using MySQL face array function, and let's store the result of this array into a new variable called user. Oh no, I made a mistake again. So I forgot to provide the connection variable in the MySQL query function. So let's just copy it here. Now it is okay. So let's provide the argument in the MySQL face array function. The first argument will be the result variable, and the second argument will be a constant. So the constant in this case is MySQL and then assoc. MySQL associative array, the short for associative array. So this function will return an associative array so that we can easily access the column of the database. But this function can return false too. If the email does not exist in the database, it will return false. So let's check it using the if statement. So only if it returns data, then that means the email exists in the database. But if it returns false, then we can say that the email does not exist in the database. So let's give an error message to the user if the email does not exist. Again, we can use the bootstrap class alert and alert danger in this case, so that it shows in a nice box. So in this case, the message we can provide is email does not exist. So let's type that email does not exist. Or does not match. So after ensuring that the email exists, we will have to check whether or not the password matches with that specific email address. If you remember, we have stored the password as encrypted. So we did not put the directly password, we have encrypted it. Now to verify it, to compare it, we'll have to use the new function called password verify. So we'll put this password verify function into the if statement. That means if password verified returns true, if it is verified, if the password matches with that specific email address, then we can allow the users to log in. So here the first argument will be the password provided by the user, and then the second argument will be the password stored in the database. So in that case, we can access it through the user variable. So as you know, it is an associative array. So in this case, the key will be the name of the column, the password. So if password verify returns true, that means if the password matches, then we can allow the users to log in. So we will now, suppose we have a user dashboard page, so we can redirect the users to that dashboard page if they successfully log in. So we can redirect using the header function. So in this function, the argument will be location and then a colon and then name of the file index.php, and immediately after that we will have to use die. It is a good practice to use die. Now as you see, we don't have any index.php file, so let's create it quickly. Index.php, and let's add the HTML5 boilerplate code again, and let's copy the styling from the other files from the login.php file. Let's put in the head text. Now let's change the title to user dashboard, and inside the body tag we can add a container again. Inside the container, let's add a welcome message saying welcome to dashboard. I made a mistake again, sorry. So in the header function, after location there should not be any space. So keep in mind that if you put any space after the location, it will show you an error. So keep in mind that. Now if a password matches, then we will redirect users to the dashboard page. However, if password does not match, then we will show the user a new error message saying that password does not match. So it need to be added in the else statement. We can copy the error from the other else statement. Here let's change it to password instead of email. So password does not match. Now let's check if everything is working fine in the browser. Let's give it a try. So here the email, let's provide the correct information. So the email is brad@example.com, and the password is 123456789. Login. So yes, it's working perfectly. Welcome to dashboard, it's showing. Now let's provide a different password or a different email address which is not in the database. Suppose admin@example.com. Now it should show an error saying that email does not match. Yes, it's working. Now let's provide the correct email address but a different password, incorrect password. Then it should show that password does not match. So it's 123 and then login. So password does not match. So everything is working. Now we have both registration page and login page ready. But the problem is everybody can access the dashboard page even they are not logged in. Even if you open it in incognito mode, it is accessible. So we cannot do this. We cannot allow this. We cannot allow all the users to access our dashboard page. To solve this problem, we can use session. Now what is session? Session is a way to store information to be used across multiple pages. That means it is a way of information storing information which we can access through multiple pages. Now let's check it in the code. So whenever you do something with session, you will have to start it using the session start function. When you use the session start function, a global array variable named $_session is created. So let's check what it has currently using the print_r method. So let's provide the session global array variable as the argument, and let's check on the browser. So it is an empty array. It does not have any value on it. Now let's add a value on the session global array variable array. So session, and then let's suppose we have an array key of name, and the value is John. Now if we check, the dashboard index.php page, we have a new value here. Now we can access this value through every page. Let's, for example, let's check on the login.php. Let's add the code without the storing the anything on it. So let's remove that line of code. Now if we check the login page, we should have the same value. So you see, we can access it through multiple pages. So we can now utilize this session to allow only the logged in users to access the dashboard page. So whenever somebody is logged in, we will start a new session, and then we will add a new value to the session global array variable. So in this case, I am using user as the array key, and the value will be yes. That means user is logged in. So if session user have some value, then we can tell that user is logged in. Now we can use it in the dashboard page. So we'll have to start the session again, and we'll have to check if the session with array key user is not set. If it is not set, then that means the user is not logged in. Then we will redirect him to the login page so that he can log in. So let's redirect him using the header function. So header, and then location, the argument will be location login.php. So if the user is not logged in, we will redirect them to the login.php. Now in the login.php, if somebody is already logged in, they don't need to log in again. So in that case, we will redirect him to the dashboard page. So if somebody is already logged in, we can check that using the isSet method again. Let's copy it from the index.php and then just remove the not operator. So if isSet session user, if the user is logged in, then we will redirect him to the dashboard page. So we can do this same for the registration page. So whenever somebody is already logged in, they don't need to register again. So we will just redirect them to the dashboard page. Now let's check on the browser if everything is working correctly. So let's log in using a correct, providing a correct login information. So brad@example.com, and the password is 129, and click login. Yeah, we can access the dashboard page again now. Now if we visit the login.php, it should redirect us to the index.php. See, it's working correctly. So let's check the registration.php. Yeah, it is redirecting us to the dashboard page. Now we need something to log out. So let's add a logout button in the dashboard page. So in this case, I'm using logout.php as the link, and we can use a bootstrap class to log it better. In this case, it is button warning. So let's label it logout. Now we'll have to create the file logout.php. Let's just copy and paste. Okay, it's not working. The copy pasting is not working. I think we'll have to add it manually. So let's create the file manually. Logout.php. Now in the logout.php, we'll have to start the session again, and then we'll have to just simply destroy the session so that there is no value anymore, and user will not be able to access the dashboard page again. So, and we'll redirect them to the login.php so that they can log in again. So header, location, and then login.php. Now let's check it in the browser. So there is a new button, logout. Let's log out. So we are logged out now. Now we cannot access the dashboard page anymore. Index.php, we cannot access it, you see. Now let's log in again with the correct information. brad@example.com, and then the password 129. Yes, now we can access the dashboard page. So everything is working correctly. Now we can add a register button on the login form, saying that you are if you are not already registered, register here. So add that line of code. So it will be just a link to the registration.php file. Now let's put the text into a paragraph tag. So in this case the text will be not registered yet. So if you are not registered, then you will have to register here. So not registered yet, then let's put the register here into an anchor tag, register here, and the link will be the registration page. So that means registration.php. Now let's do the same for the registration.php file. Let's copy the code and let's use it here. So in this case the text will be already registered. So if you are already registered, then you don't need to register again, just log in. So already registered, and then on the anchor tag it will be like login, already registered, login here. So if you are already registered, then login here. So the link will be login.php, the login page. Now let's check it in the browser. So register here and then login here. So everything is working perfectly. Thank you very much for watching my video. Please don't forget to subscribe and like and also share.